In 2019, the Toronto Raptors came out on top and won the NBA championship, as after years of failure, finally the Toronto Raptors were on top of the NBA world. This was a championship that caught a lot of people off guard, as even though they had a great team with a superstar in Kawhi Leonard on the roster, people had written the Toronto Raptors off years ago. But thanks to the exploits of Kawhi Leonard and contributions from many others on the roster at very pivotal moments, they were able to pull through with a championship that many people did not expect at the start of the season. But the big question of this video is, how did that championship come to pass? Let's take a little trip down memory lane and talk about the 2019 Toronto Raptors. No one had a more difficult offseason than the Toronto Raptors in 2018, as they just lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers after nearly winning 60 games in the regular season to a Cavs team that was really depleted outside of LeBron James. And not only did they lose in the second round, but they lost in a sweep in a series that DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, their duo, came up short yet again against a LeBron James-led team. The loss was so embarrassing that Dwayne Casey, who had won Coach of the Year, was fired at the end of the season. And with DeRozan being an all-star in the middle of his prime, his value wasn't going to get any higher. So Masai Ujiri was faced with a decision on what to do with this roster going forward. Now that LeBron James was leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers, you could run it back with this team, or you could just move on from DeMar DeRozan, because no matter what, you just knew he was not that guy. And credit to Masai Ujiri for making a really tough decision in trading DeMar for Kawhi Leonard. I understand that Kawhi was a year rental and DeMar was a fan favorite, so at the time it received a pretty mixed reaction. But despite just the result being a championship, a lot of owners truly settle for mediocrity, and it was very obvious that Masai Ujiri was about winning a championship by any means necessary, and DeMar DeRozan was simply not that guy. But not only were the Toronto Raptors contemplating their future in the summer of 2018, but out west the San Antonio Spurs had their own problems as well, as Kawhi Leonard, who only played 9 games due to a quadricep injury that he never fully recovered from before the season even started, demanded a trade, because let's be real, the Spurs didn't think he was that injured to not play, and Kawhi got opinions from his second doctors. The Spurs medical staff cleared him, so it was a really murky situation that led with teammates calling Kawhi Leonard out, and Kawhi just being the normal guy that he is, not saying a single word, but working in the shadows to get out of that situation. So the Raptors and Spurs, looking at each other, said, hey, I'll trade my problem for your problem, and they moved Kawhi Leonard in exchange with DeMar DeRozan. The full trade was Jakob Poeltl and DeMar leaving Toronto to San Antonio in exchange for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. As soon as Kawhi Leonard touched down in Toronto, it was reported by numerous sources that he did not want to play for that team. It wasn't more so a shot at the city of Toronto or the team, it was more so just due to the fact that he wanted to play in Los Angeles, his hometown, as the Lakers was his preferred trade destination, but the Spurs were not trying to trade him to a rival in the Western Conference. But eventually Kawhi just had to suck it up and play with the Toronto Raptors, as sure, he didn't want to play there, his hometown was Los Angeles, but he only had 1 year left on his deal. The Raptors were already taking a risk by just having him on the team, especially considering that they traded their franchise player in DeMar DeRozan for him, so the least that he could do was finish it out. And throughout the entire regular season, the Toronto Raptors are one of the best teams in the league on both sides of the ball. They finished the year winning 58 games, finishing 8th in points per game, 5th in offensive rating, 9th in opponents points per game, and 5th in defensive rating. Mind you, their two best players in Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry had missed significant time due to injuries or load management, and they were still able to win nearly 60 games. One of the standouts for the Toronto Raptors that season was the performance of Pascal Siakam, who won the Most Improved Player of the Year after going from 7 points a game the previous year to 17 points a game, 5 rebounds to 7 rebounds, 2 assists to 3, and went from a true shooting percentage of 55% to 63%. Later on in the season, even though Valanciunas was a really good contributor for them on the boards and a nice post presence offensively, they decided to go in a more defensive oriented route and sacrifice rebounding by picking up Marc Gasol at the trade deadline. Though Gasol was declining from his Defensive Player of the Year days in Memphis, he had added a 3-point shot and still was a really capable defender at the time. So going into the playoffs, the Raptors were a solidified team top to bottom in damn near every single aspect. You have supporting players like Danny Green, Pascal Siakam, Van Vliet off the bench, and Marc Gasol. They may have lost OG Anunoby in the regular season due to an injury that kept him out for the remainder of the playoffs as well, but guys like Norman Powell and Serge Ibaka were nice spark plugs on both sides of the ball for that team to fulfill that role. And instead of DeMar DeRozan leading the way, instead you have Kawhi Leonard, who is a bona fide superstar in the league and seen as a top 5 to 10 player. It really is surprising that many people didn't talk about this team throughout the entire regular season for the most part, and come playoff time they didn't even have them on their radar. In the first round they would dispatch of the Orlando Magic in 5 games. Granted, the Magic actually pulled off a pretty huge upset in game 1 of the series, but outside of that they were cooked for the rest of it. If anything, this series had confirmed to a lot of people that the Raptors weren't really on shit for the rest of the playoffs, because Kyle Lowry had a 0-point game to start things off in the series. I remember watching the highlights of that game and being so disappointed in Kyle Lowry, because like 0 points against the Orlando Magic. I mean, they were a good defense, but bruh, 0 points. But unfortunately, the inefficiencies in the supporting cast didn't just stop in the Orlando series, as against the Philadelphia 76ers, my goodness, talk about guys not showing up. Though I don't think that Kawhi just straight up backpacked them as many people make it seem, I do believe that Kawhi Leonard was the only source of consistent scoring efficiency in that series. As if you look at the shooting splits from his teammates, it's pretty pathetic what was going on. They could show up for 1 or 2 games here and there, and they kind of took turns doing so, but to be able to replicate it on a night in and night out basis for that 7-game series, it was only one guy that was able to do that, and it was Kawhi Leonard. But if you look at what that Toronto Raptors team did on the defensive side of the ball, it truly is astounding, because many people are going to criticize them for what they were unable to do offensively, which is fair, but let's not ignore what they did on the defensive side of the ball and how they shut down the Philadelphia 76ers. For starters, Joel Embiid, who granted was dealing with diarrhea at the time of the series, was locked up by Marc Gasol in ways that he has never been, holding Joel Embiid to under 18 points a game and 9 rebounds, 4 turnovers on 37% shooting from the field. They were able to stop Ben Simmons from getting into the paint, and obviously he's not shooting no jumpers, so he's out of the equation. And overall, the Philadelphia 76ers offense was pretty stagnant outside of Jimmy Butler, who had a pretty good performance in the series overall, but that's really where the whole concept of needing a superstar in these moments comes in. Kawhi Leonard came in numerous fourth quarters and just killed them, and as good as Jimmy Butler was, he's not a superstar. He's not on the level of a Kawhi Leonard. He made big plays too, but Kawhi Leonard was just able to one-up him in a lot of those situations, especially in game 7, where after Jimmy Butler tied the game, Kawhi hit one of the greatest shots of all time in order to send the Sixers to the Eastern Conference Finals.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
It was truly an iconic shot from Kawhi Leonard, an iconic series overall, averaging 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists on 53% shooting from the field and 86% at the free throw line. In terms of entertainment, I think that might be the most entertaining series that I have ever watched. The crowds were insane, the play was insane, iconic moment after iconic moment, along with such a perfect and satisfying ending. But that was just the second round. More work was needed to be done in order for them to win that championship, as awaiting for them in the Eastern Conference Finals was the MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. As the Bucks just dispatched of the Boston Celtics in round 2, that had gone to the Eastern Conference Finals and was 1 game away from going to the NBA Finals, and with the additions of Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward to the team in the next year, a lot of people assumed that they were going to go right back to the NBA Finals and flip the switch in the playoffs, which obviously didn't happen, as the Bucks disposed of them in 5 games. Plenty of people had the Bucks coming out on top, not only because they had the MVP in Giannis, but they were the #1 seed throughout the regular season in the Eastern Conference. And after the first 2 games of the series, many people felt justified in believing so, as the Bucks took an early 2-0 lead. But just like that, things changed as soon as Kawhi Leonard decided to become the primary defender on Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Raptors formed their infamous wall defensive scheme. team, as Kawhi would guard Giannis on the perimeter, and players like Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Pascal Siakam, along with occasional help from guys like Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, and Fred VanVleet, they really made it a whole team effort to stop Giannis, and it worked, as Giannis had his worst series to date as he averaged 23 points and 14 rebounds along with 6 assists, but shot 44% from the field, 33% from 3, and of course his free throws, he was just clanking them and airballing them. Drake was trolling that man, and he shot 58%. A true shooting percentage of 52% overall. But in that series, I think a lot of people forget the offensive contributions from the supporting cast. Kyle Lowry averaged 19, 5, and 5 on 51, 47, and 84 shooting splits. The three-point shooting was incredible for this team, as Norman Powell shot 42% from 3. VanVleet shot 57% from 3, as he just woke up after he had a baby and started hooping like crazy. And even Marc Gasol, on nearly 5 attempts a game, shot 41% from 3. The spacing that this team had was truly at an all-time high in this series, and combined with their defensive strategy, they were able to win the series in 6 games. Not only do I believe the supporting cast deserve a lot more credit, especially in this series, but Nick Nurse as well. The defensive adjustments that he made after game 2 in order to stop Giannis Antetokounmpo from being as effective as he was earlier on in the series was a big turnaround for this series, and more than likely saved their season. And for the first time in Toronto Raptors history, they were headed towards the NBA Finals. Now, I won't lie, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what happened in the finals, as a lot of people know the story. Kevin Durant goes down with an Achilles injury earlier on in the playoffs, so he missed a couple of games to start off the series. As for when he did come back to play through the injury, it was up in the air how serious it was, but after the first 15 minutes or so, we knew how serious it was because he completely tore it, and we saw it on film. So many people chalk up the Raptors winning this series as a result of injury, and I definitely think injury did contribute, because if KD is healthy, let's be real, they're not winning this series. But when you look throughout all of NBA history, a little bit of luck is always needed to win a championship. Whether that's injuries or favorable matchups, it happens all the time. And I don't think what the Raptors did that season should just be negated due to something that they can't even control in the first place. And in the finals, they took care of business and won the series in 6 games, thanks to not only Kawhi Leonard averaging 29 and 10 on 60% true shooting, but once again the efforts from his supporting cast was a big factor towards them winning this series. Siakam scored 32 points on 14 of 17 shooting, while Kawhi Leonard had a pretty spotty shooting night. In game 3, the Raptors were just destroying the Warriors from behind the 3-point line, as outside of Kawhi Leonard from deep, they shot 47% collectively. In game 4, Ibaka came off the bench and dropped 20 points in 21 minutes along with 2 blocks. And in the closeout game, despite Kawhi Leonard shooting 43% from the field and 20% from 3, the rest of the team was able to step up in a major way. Siakam had 26 points on 58% shooting, Lowry had 26 points along with 10 assists, Ibaka had 15 off the bench on 58% shooting from the field, and VanVleet had his best game of the postseason with 22 points on 45% shooting from deep. And as mentioned earlier, KD did go out with an injury, along with Klay Thompson, by the way, who suffered an ACL tear in game 6. And seeing how Curry was the only source of consistent offense for the Golden State Warriors, the Raptors decided to implement the box and one defensive scheme in order to stop Steph Curry, or at the bare minimum tried to contain him. And obviously it worked, as the Toronto Raptors came out victorious against the Warriors in a 6-game series. Kawhi Leonard was awarded with his second Finals MVP award, and finally the Toronto Raptors were on top of the NBA world as champions. It was the culmination of a season that had a pretty unpredictable ending. This team was sound top to bottom and fills every checkbox when it comes to a championship roster. Defensively, damn near every single person was at least above average to elite on that side of the ball. They had rim protection in Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, they had point of attack defenders like Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Danny Green, and they had wings like Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, and Norman Powell. They had had great floor spacing that extended towards their bigs. They had great passing and playmaking with guys on the perimeter like Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, and in the post with Marc Gasol. They had depth outside of their starting lineup. They had a head coach that was willing to make adjustments in Nick Nurse, and most importantly, they had Kawhi Leonard, a superstar that was able to step up in the big moments. I often see many people confuse Kawhi Leonard being a superstar and stepping up in these moments for him carrying the team. As I posted on Twitter recently that I believe the narrative that Kawhi Leonard just backpacked them to the finals is a completely overblown narrative, and I called it a casual take, because just off of defense alone, there's just no way that he solo squatted all these teams. It's a 5-on-5 game. You have to stop them from scoring as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, collectively, they played amazing. And offensively, sure, there was no superstar help for Kawhi Leonard, but that team was so deep and well-rounded that on a night-to-night basis, they were able to kind of take turns stepping up. One night it could be Siakam. The next night it could be Lowry. Then on some random night, Danny Green will drop 17 and Marc Gasol will drop 15. It doesn't have to be one or two guys dropping 30 pieces every single night. The Raptors were just a well-put team, and they were all able to collectively contribute towards their success. Just because you have a superstar step up in those big moments does not take away from that. And big ups goes to Masai Ujiri. Not only is he a Nigerian brother like myself, but he constructed a roster of players that weren't even lottery picks. They built that team from the ground up by making smart decisions in the trade market, drafting well with scouting, along with developing them to the best of their ability. So once again, never forget the Toronto Raptors in 2019, as sure they had an unlikely championship run, but it was a historic one for the ages. But that concludes this video. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and press that bell for post notifications. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. You guys stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.